With just 2 rounds remaining in the 1986 Formula 1 season, the championship looks virtually unlosable for Nigel Mansell. The Williams that year was the class of the field, and the Brummie Mammoth was coming into his own as a driver, extrapolating the most out of a car that just had unprecedented levels of downforce thanks to his gigantic testicles. And here on this day in Mexico City, he should be crowned the world champion. He started the race from 3rd, and he was still on it as everyone else went past. He ended up finishing behind his teammate Nelson Piquet, who was never in a million years going to let Mansell pass in his bid for the championship because A, Piquet himself was in with an outside chance of the championship still, and B, this was Nelson Piquet. His moral compass went out with the Nixon administration, and so the championship would go to the final round in Australia. But even then, Mansell surely should have the championship wrapped up without much difficulty. All he had to do was finish 3rd in what was the fastest car, and then it wouldn't matter what anyone else did. With a handful of laps to go, Mansell was 3rd. But then all of a sudden, he wasn't. This was the point where Mansell's championship truly ended. Williams also proceeded to shoot themselves in the foot by pitting Piquet to avoid a potential tyre blowout for him. But despite an enormous charge at the end of the race, it wasn't enough, and the McLaren of Alain Prost claimed that most impossible of championship wins. Impossible, since Williams never really should have lost it. Sure, they were the Constructors' champions, but they had 2 candidates that should have been the Drivers' champion, yet neither of them were. A culmination of errors on the part of the team and the drivers made this a substantial bottle job that lives on through the ages, and one would hope should serve as a stark warning in history for all those that follow who have the ambition of being the world champion. 38 years later, the McLaren team are in a similar-ish position to where they were that day in Adelaide. Their car was good, although not as good as the Red Bull, and at this point, not as good as the Ferraris were either. Compared to where they were 12 months ago, however, it was still a good starting point, and for the first few races, the McLarens were performing modestly. A constant flow of points sprinkled with the podium here and there, and in particular, it was Lando Norris who seemed to be having a breakout year. And you could bet your damn ass that I'm gonna revel in the fact that I predicted this at the start of the year. He was hovering around the top 3 or 4 positions, and in China, he took a sprint pole position. Still though, despite this good stuff, they just didn't seem to be much of a threat to the Red Bulls, or more specifically, they didn't seem a threat to Max Verstappen, who, it seemed, was cruising his way to yet another world championship. Whoopee. McLaren's car was good, but they didn't seem to have anything really to add other than a constant barrage of new sponsors onto the car for round after round after round. Ecolab, Dropbox, Surfshark. And okay, maybe not Surfshark, but I wouldn't put it past them because Surfshark, well, they define excellency. Yeah, there's a lot here that you've probably heard already, but with our dependence online increasing day by day, we want, nay, need our stuff to be adequately protected. We would like to think that our stuff is safe, but with trust being at an all-time low, you know as well as I do that you are going to need proper security. And guess what Surfshark is? If you haven't already explored it yet, it's a VPN service that protects your information by encrypting all the data that you send through the internet, thereby protecting said data and keeping any of life's more interesting creatures from getting at it. But hey, you perhaps want a little something extra? Are you, for argument's sake, sick of having content restricted based on your location? I mean, who isn't? Well, with Surfshark, you can solve that problem by simply changing your location, at least virtually. Not only is this good for people who want to keep up with their favorite shows, but it can also be a vital tool for those who live where freedom is the speak of the devil. It ain't quite teleportation, but it is about as close as we're going to get right now. So, secure your privacy with Surfshark. Enter coupon code JOSHREVEL for an extra 4 months free with your subscription, and fully protect yourself when all is said and done for something like a couple of bucks a month. Plus, you're going to get those 4 free months and a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. So, what the bloody hell are you waiting for? I'm not fooling you, aren't I? I know what you're waiting for. You want me to talk about Miami, and about how this round changed everything. McLaren arrived with a substantial upgrade package that included upgraded suspension, brake ducts, engine cover, side pot inlet, winglets, bodywork, and front wing. It almost wasn't the same car anymore. It was straight up B-spec. What did all of this add up to? Well, from this point onwards, the McLaren became very freaking fast. Over the course of the weekend, Lando was atop the timesheets, proving a genuine threat for a potential win, and especially so in the sprint race, where he was the fastest in the first and second session of qualifying. But then he muffed up his run in SQ3, which threw him down the order and left him to be collected at turn 1. That day, he had no luck. On Sunday, however, he had all the luck, seized the opportunistically shitty safety car, and drove away to his first Grand Prix win. The biggest takeaway from this race, apart from the pace of the McLaren, was that it proved that Lando can take the dub, dispelling the argument that he's bound to bottle any potential win that comes his way. For a driver, this sort of breakthrough can herald the beginning of a rich vein of form. But in Formula 1, the driver's form isn't enough. You need the car underneath you, and it needs to happen on a constant basis. Was this just a one-off for McLaren? At the next round at Imola, we got our answer. If not for minor mistakes from Lando and Pastry, McLaren were staring down the barrel of a front row lockout for the San Marino Grand Prix. And then on Sunday, Lando pushed Verstappen hard for the win. The pendulum was undeniably beginning to swing. Red Bull were in the midst of being dethroned, while the McLaren was just getting stronger and stronger. And Lando in particular was really starting to hit his stride. The gap between first and second in the championship was starting to narrow, but there was a major problem going on. Lando's pace was incredible, but his execution was sloppy. There were a lot of instances where he could have scored better results, taken more points out of the championship lead. Very quickly, he was gaining a reputation for throwing away his front row starts, losing places, and setting himself on the back foot for the rest of the race. It wasn't until Zandvoort where he would finally vanquish that winning drought, but it still came off the back of a poor start that saw him lose the lead to his championship rival. The run down to Tarzan is shorter than Danny DeVito's gonads, and he still managed to lose out. At a track as narrow and rancid as Zandvoort is, it's a good thing that McLaren at this stage had become an absolute rocket ship. You could barely pass wind around that track, never mind a car on equal bearings. Concerns over his starts were already in full swing before this. This just added fuel to the fire. He had his critics, and he needed to silence them. And when he got pole position in Monza, he did not lose the lead at the first corner. He lost it at turn 4 to his teammate, who went around the outside of him, pulled his pants down, and left him vulnerable to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, who went on to achieve an ultra-popular win, cementing Leclerc's status in Italy of being just below that of Coffee and God, but now about level with the Pope. But away from the red flare mist of the Tifosi on this glorious Sunday, the big talking point was, how in the hell did McLaren lose this race? Hypothetically speaking, if Lando had remained in front, maybe Ferrari's one-stop strategy would have stood less of a chance. But that's the thing. What exactly was meant to happen here? Tell Oscar that he's not supposed to overtake like this? Are they not allowed to race? Papaya rules? What are they exactly? Well, that depends upon what McLaren really want to do here. With Red Bull no longer being the top dog in the yard, the Constructors' Championship should be in relatively easy reach for McLaren. So what's really left is nabbing the Drivers' Championship too. Now, we've got 8 rounds left, with 3 of them being sprint events. Norris must eat into the points deficit by an average of about 8 points per round. That is perfectly doable, but to do it, he's gonna have to be nigh on perfect, because whatever that Red Bull is still physically capable of, Max will achieve it. But save for Zandvoort, and even that was marginal, has there been any round this year that you could say that Lando was perfect in? Well, since he loves to talk about hypotheticals, let's have a look back from Miami onwards. The sprint race. He was top in qualifying until he turned into Lance Stroll in SQ3. Even if he only achieved a top 3 in the sprint, that's still about 6 points. In Barcelona, you would be hard-pressed to say that Max had the faster car, yet that was a 7-point swing right there. And lest we forget, Lando did have pole position, and finally in Monza, he lost out to Leclerc and Piastri, potentially losing 10 points. And then for him to say that Ferrari had the better car in the race? Oh boy. You've got some stones, dude. Not even I could pull off a lie like that. And you've also just torpedoed any humility that you've ever had. Those are merely examples off the top of my head, but you are talking about 23 points. All of a sudden, the deficit comes down from 62 to 32, making it only 4 points per round to gain on Max. What do you think's more manageable out of those two? Now, yeah, this is racing. Not everything is gonna go your way all the time. And I know it's real rich for the sentient clump of mayonnaise on YouTube to criticize him, since this ain't as easy as we all make it out to be. But you have got to make all your moments count. Drivers such as Max, such as Lewis, such as Eyebrows will always back themselves up. That's why they're World Drivers Champions. That is why they are legends of the sport. With Lando, it's always, if I did this, if I did that. Being self-critical is a good thing for self-improvement. But if we keep on talking about the same thing over and over, week in and week out, you see what's not working, why the hell are you not fixing it? It's not as if you're incapable of doing it, but you know, I won't lay the entire blame at the feet of this Belgian. Let's talk about the team here for a moment. McLaren need to sort their it out. Piastri can 100% hang with Lando, no doubt. We've seen multiple times this year that he can be the better driver, but we're at the stage of the season where they need to seriously consider prioritizing Lando. I understand how bad of a take that's gonna sound to some people, and they'll say that it ain't over till it's over. But Piastri is 44 points behind Lando, and over 100 points behind Max. That is a lot of margin to regather in 8 rounds. Even if Oscar has been far more consistent lately, if McLaren seriously want to win this driver's championship, they're going to have to explore the possibility of making Piastri their Rubens Barrichello, or if you're a relatively new F1 fan, his dungeon bitch. I know, not very demure. I'm never gonna forgive myself for saying that. Now, they don't have to do that, but if they are going to pull the trigger on that, do it now. Stop sitting on your hands and waiting until it's too late. It was novel what Lando did in giving Piastri the lead back in Hungary, but that was a mess that you made, McLaren, and odds are that those 7 points are going to matter come Abu Dhabi. You've got an open goal here, and you're being Emil Heskey. Some people will say, oh, but they've got equal status. Piastri could still come back and, at least, overtake Lando for second in the championship. That team orders are just not the way to go in modern day F1. To which, I do agree with a lot of that, but you cannot come to me with that and expect me to believe you would say that if the shoe were on the other foot. Whoever your favorite driver is immaterial at this point. What is the best chance for McLaren to get the Drivers' Championship here? Is it to back the leading horse, or will they remain impartial to the better end? Either way can work, but McLaren, pick your damn poison already. Lando has since said that he doesn't really want team orders, that he just wants to race legitimately and win the title on his own merit. That's novel. I respect that. And if you can do it, do it. But make life a little easier for yourself, you shaggy-haired tramp, and stop throwing away your pole positions, because Woking has not seen a bottling production like this since the Industrial Revolution. And by the way, if you're upset about Oscar's move on Lando, I hate to be the Baron of bad news, but that's racing. Now, look, it's great that Lando is reaching his potential, and seeing McLaren back at the top of the food chain brings a tear to my eye. But at some point, as rich as it is for an F1 YouTuber to say, these Donnies need to look in the mirror. You cannot make the number of errors that they've collectively made and still expect to win the World Championship. History has shown that, and it seems that 38 years later, history is repeating itself. A team that allowed internal rubbish to plague them, while its star British driver, despite all the talent they had, couldn't help digging themselves a hole, despite having a car that was the class of the field. 38 years ago, McLaren were the beneficiary. 38 years later, they're at risk of being the befallen. Am I being biased in any of this? I mean, how can I be? I don't see Liam Lawson in this battle. The simple reality is this. Nay, all of us, just want to see a stonking fight for the title, and we are getting it. And hell, if Ferrari are really becoming serious and can get Leclerc to turn this into a three-way, no race fan the world over would be disappointed. Not really knowing who will win the championship is awesome. And mark my words, this title fight will go to Abu Dhabi. Who's going to be the champion? I don't know. And I really don't mind, just so long as whatever we get is cinema, and I am sure it will be. But the last thing that fans of McLaren and Lando will want is for the checkered flag to fall that evening and for him to once again utter that already boring word that has already become synonymous with him. If. F1 is if spelled backwards.